Welcome to my channel, The Magic of Java. This is an extract from my second book, The Magic Sugar from Java. It's a novel. It reflects my experience of falling in love with Indonesia and falling in love with an Indonesian lady and slowly recognising that she has been taken from me either through black magic or simple criminality. Or is it simply my descent into madness? Whatever, it's still a novel. Any resemblance to real people is unintentional. But of course it's based on my experience. And yes, it's based on people I know. But amalgamations or caricatures of them. I do mention real celebrities and hope they will forgive me, along with any of my family and friends who believe that they have identified themselves. Are these, or are these not the pills we associate with juvenile delinquents? We heard from Titi that she was happy in Brahma's old house with her niece, the niece's husband and their child. Not least as Pajitan is a friendly neighbourhood in which Titi is well known, so unlike our kampong, only a few kilometres to the west. Although I am told that it's nothing like as happy as when Made was there, putting a smile on everyone's face. Furthermore, Titi did not seem to be managing her finances well. So uncharacteristic. You see, Widiati cannot manage hers at all. Mawar is prone to impulsive spending, especially to cheer herself up. But Titi could not be more careful. Titi shuns expensive malls, restaurants, even hairdressers, and takes delight in finding bargains. We also heard that Cecilio was financially contributing towards Titi's new household. I was not sure how to interpret all this, but it was causing me anguish as my money in Indonesia was running dangerously low and we were still spending money at twice the rate I had budgeted. A part of the reason for our excessive spending was that we were now running 3 homes in Indonesia, but also the cost of Mawar's medication, taxis to the hospital, and Pakano and Bude and Mas Predictor's wages. Possibly a part of the issue was that Kiki and his wife were now on the run from the police, so the unlikely event that he had intended to help support Titi, he was unable to do so. Worse still, it meant that Titi's home was being watched by the police, and it was completely unsafe for a foreigner to visit, despite the crime being a very Indonesian affair, with a foreigner's involvement unlikely to the point of being ridiculous. It would seem that Kiki's wife had made off with the deposits for Umrah, an increasingly common crime in Indonesia. Indeed, Indonesian designer Anissa Hasibuan was jailed for 18 years for the same crime, although was a little more ambitious in stealing over 60 million. I know. What goes through the mind of somebody embezzling $60 million from pilgrims, perfectly illustrating the obscene greed which flourishes in Indonesia. But this is not a crime I have ever heard of foreigners being involved in, and believe me, everyone in Indonesia would have been made aware of it. In fact, quite apart from questioning why anybody would think themselves so important to defraud others out of 60 million, let alone $350 billion, should we not question why anybody thinks themselves so important to have $60 million when others have none? However it was acquired, but my general concerns are less about how wealth is acquired as to how the wealthy then use their money to perpetuate hierarchies and beliefs which not only do disservice to mankind but to the elite in themselves as they tilt towards tyranny and myopia. My comments no longer reflecting a left-leaning philosophy, simply a concern for humanity, including the souls of the millionaires themselves. The honours and possessions are also installed in bestowed by the devil, is known because for the reason he is called the Prince of the world, now as it is unknown when honour and possessions are blessings and when they are curses. Emanuel Swedenborg. As always, Widiati was not coping with paying the electricity, the internet, the cable TV, and had already been cut off. The next time I visited the house in South Jakarta, it was completely deplete of things like soap powder, detergents, shampoos, etc. Widiati had warned me that a final project at university would cost a lot of money, but bless her, it didn't cost anything like as much as I had budgeted, as Widiati was incapable of providing me with an estimate and simply demanded money to be transferred immediately, as my son does. So the other expenses were manageable, at least for now. After completing her project, Widiati visited us in Gunung and as Buddy was quick to point out, she was spending as much as snacks from convenience stores as the rest of us put together on real food. Not least as our large garden was now almost in full production, and we could even swap our excess beans for things like rice. Although I also felt that Mass Predictor was selling some of our beans and pocketing the money. Fresh though our food was, it was boring, and with so much added sugar, and I was secretly sympathetic with Widiati whilst driven. I had also under-budgeted for the cost of getting my next residence in Indonesia, the total cost of which was completely outrageous. 8 months' salary to a public servant, and more than a year's at the minimum wage. This virtually wiped out all the money I had in Indonesia, and with a UK insurance company playing games with me in releasing my investments, I was becoming very anxious. Indonesian government officials, even the British Embassy, will argue that it's no longer necessary to pay such fees, but all foreigners know of someone who has suffered at the hands of immigration. The law and the interpretation of the law is such that should an immigration official want to play games, it could easily cost $50,000 to sort out. $50,000 that I could no longer afford to risk, and such problems appear to be on the increase. Quite apart from the financial risk, I could not risk being deported and trying to sort out the mess, whilst Mawar was still so dependent upon me. Needless to say, my son Branwell kept demanding money from me, but he had blocked my WhatsApp account, meaning that he communicated by international SMS, costing me and him nearly as much as the money he was demanding from me. You see, I think such irresponsibility, along with bank charges from being constantly in the red and reoccurring subscriptions for internet services he no longer remembers even wanting, are a major part of his inability to budget. But his mother taught him to ridicule me every time I pointed out such practicalities to him, and it is now impossible for me to explain such things to him. Indeed, she taught him to refuse to eat vegetables or fruit that I had bought from the market, insisting on eating only those from Sainsbury's and religiously disposing of those that were out of date, regardless of their appearance. But Branwell cannot cook and is now vegan, necessitating eating in trendy cafes in Manchester's northern quarter. Nevertheless, based on my own experience, I believe that it is shameful how the government, banks and utilities target the most vulnerable in our society to boost their revenue. While some actions are sanctioned at the highest level, most are down to local management striving to reach targets imposed from above, but shielded from the top by the true inhumanity of their decisions. Mawar was very nearly back as normal. I knew that she was still somewhat troubled, but these were surface issues. Inexplicable, she is still unable to list the catalogue of the Creative Funk label, maybe as a result of the hypnotism in Puja. I do hope that the Dukan in Puja is not too upset that the matrix numbers are not our bank's PIN numbers and grows to appreciate Creative Funk, especially 12002. Just as we both occasionally felt the physical effects that we had for over a year, if we didn't believe they were signs of physical possessions and didn't dwell on them, They went away. Whatever was wrong with us was going, and in doing so, our paranoia and ability to escalate our problems was also going. Drinamol is a mixture of dextroamphetamine and amylbarbital, and was the chemical mix of the legendary Purple Hearts. These later became a blue tablet. Us soulies imaginatively called them blueies, or green and clear capsules. Yes, you've got it, called green and clears. Smithline and French's production lines at Welwyn Garden City could not keep up with the demand for blueies from Wigan Casino, so some criminal mastermind decided to go into production, God knows what with, but they also contained strychnine, which we presumed gave them their speckles. For those of you not brought up in the subculture that I was, in which opium was the religion of the people, you'll be saying, isn't strychnine a poison? Well, yes it is, and a characteristic of the equally unimaginatively named speckled blueies was a bad neck one got from this poison. But strychnine also enhances the effect of other drugs, presumably meaning that less of the more expensive drug needs to be ingested. It is therefore frequently found in LSD. My old girlfriend Angie from Gloucester had taken some speckled blueies at Wigan Casino, and I called the pharmacy at Copthorne Hospital for advice, but the phone was put down when it became obvious that my call was being traced. I was fortunate that the counterfeiters never turned their attention from Welwyn Garden City to Loughborough, and so never experienced Strick. Angie recovered, and the West Midlands Drug Squad never traced my call. But what a perfect illustration of how disastrous authoritarian solutions to social behaviour can be. At Wigan Casino, I was very friendly with Carl from Lancaster. When we met, we were both collecting the Richter record label. At the time, a number of copies of Al Kent's The Way You've Been Acting Lately found their way to the record bar. Carl had introduced me to the Lancaster regulars, including Frankie. At the time of the speckled blueies, Frankie approached Carl, explaining that he felt unwell. Carl asked if he'd taken any of the speckled blueies, to which he replied, yes. Oh, I had a friend who took some of those last week. Frankie kept coming back with a new ailment, to which Carl's reply was always, yes, that's what's happened to my friend last week. In the end, Frankie could not contain himself any longer and asked what had happened to Carl's friend, to which Carl replied, oh, he died. Such is the nature of paranoia. If we no longer attribute everything to black magic and ghosts, we break the cycle of paranoia and begin to recover. Carl was also planting suggestions in Frankie's mind, itself a form of hypnosis. The same had happened to us, certainly directly and possibly telepathically. Indeed, hypnosis overloads the mind with information, and leaving much to the imagination is a perfect vehicle. It was this knowledge that I decided to investigate further my overwhelming conviction that we had been poisoned. We had all had hallucinations, but whatever it was we were taking was slow acting. Now what substance could this be? I don't know why, but I eventually decided to look up lead poisoning, but I was aghast when I finally did. The symptoms included abdominal pain, arthritis, blindness in parts of the visual field, blue Burton line along the gums, body pains, brain swelling, pressure on the skull, confusion, constipation, convulsions, coma, delayed reaction times, delirium, depression, Devon colic, diarrhea, grey skin, gout, hypertension, fatigue, foot and wrist drop, including claw hand, hallucinations, headaches, hearing loss, insomnia, irritability, kidney failure, loss of appetite, loss of coordination, loss of libido, low sperm count and abnormal sperm, memory loss, metallic taste in the mouth, muscle weakness, nausea, ocular problems, pain and tingling in the hands and feet, personality changes, disorders, poor motor skills, pregnancy, complications, seizures, slurred speech, tremors, weakened immune system, weight loss. Oh my God, an almost perfect description of my ailments since I've moved into our house in South Jakarta, especially all our ailments over the last year. This included my large poos, gout, our muscle pains and weakness, depression, confusion and memory loss, even me seeing and talking to ghosts. Of course, all of our symptoms could be explained by other things, such as stress, but this is fanciful when there is a single explanation for all. That is not to discount the effects of things like stress, simply that our main and underlying problem is lead poisoning. In fact, even the red spots and rashes were not due to needles placed into an effigy of us, but the effects of heavy metal toxins being released on the skin through sweat, which in my case was profuse some nights, although these toxins do originate in the intestines. Amazingly, so were my feelings that we were going to die was due to lead poisoning, as our default mold network was deactivated. I had experienced similar feelings on some psychedelics, but never so real and without moving quickly into another thought. But then the majority of drug overdoses die from shock rather than the direct pharmacology, so we were closer to death than we even believed. Then I came across lead acetate, or sugar of lead, which tastes and looks almost identical to sugar, and was of course what Pa Angabaya had given us in Jimba, and which Mawar, Titi and I had taken religiously every day for some 2 months. Maybe this was also what Ibu Pujet had put in our salt jar. I believe that given our brains had already swollen, we would have been dead in less than a month had we kept taking the sugar, although the other symptoms may have become so severe that we sought help or been incapable of taking more sugar long before death. In fact, it is more likely that our confusion and memory loss would have resulted in death by accident long before we died of the toxicity. Indeed, over the past year, we have taken so many risks when told to seek urgent help and through our own paranoia. Given their devastating effect on our lives, is this evil? Well, it has to come close, and maybe this is what it's all about, me finally confronting evil. Well, that concludes this chapter from the Magic Sugar of Java. I do hope you liked it. I'm going to attempt to add another chapter every week. In order for you to be notified about it, please subscribe and hit the bell. In fact, I need subscribers and listeners to reach monetization. And I do want feedback, but I also want to stay true to my experiences. I really want to keep things real. So therefore, I don't want to alter the format too much. But above all, thank you for listening. Thank you so much.